The Austin sun, a molten coin in the late afternoon sky, cast long, dramatic shadows across the city. Elon Musk, a man who typically navigated the world through the lens of deadlines and data, found himself behind the wheel of his Tesla Cybertruck, a vehicle as unapologetically futuristic as the man himself. But today, the route was different, far removed from the polished chrome and gleaming glass of his usual haunts. He was on the periphery, in a part of Austin that hummed with a quiet, almost forgotten energy. The break had been a sudden and unexpected departure from his meticulously planned life, an unplanned detour that had left him with a strange mix of disorientation and quiet liberation. His mind, a constant whirl of calculations and projections, still hummed with the future of SpaceX's upcoming Martian landing and Tesla's relentless pursuit of battery perfection. But for the first time in a long time, his focus wasn't directed at the stars or the next technological leap. It was on the present, the worn storefronts and the people who populated this unassuming corner of his city. His gaze, usually trained on the horizon, settled on a modest cafe, nestled between a vintage record store and a dusty antique shop. The faded sign above the door, slightly askew, read, "Galileo's Corner, for dreamers and doers." The words seemingly hand-painted in a font as worn as the brick facade below. The name resonated with him, a subtle echo of the restless curiosity that had propelled him through a lifetime of audacious projects. It felt like a sign, a gentle nudge from the universe. He pulled the Cybertruck, a metallic behemoth in the unassuming gravel lot, its geometric lines stark against the rustic backdrop. Stepping out, he moved with a deliberate, almost unhurried pace, the sharp angles of his silhouette softened by the golden light. As he pushed open the cafe door, a wave of warmth and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped him. The scent was like a nostalgic handshake, a reminder of simpler times, of moments spent hunched over textbooks and fueled by endless cups of caffeine. The cafe was a haven, a comforting chaos of mismatched furniture and overflowing bookshelves. The walls were a patchwork of literary and scientific aspirations, showcasing everything from dog-eared copies of Dune to well-worn engineering manuals. It was a space that seemed to welcome anyone with an inkling of creativity, a haven for those who dared to think differently. Elon approached the counter, his movements as assured as they were effortless. A young barista, her smile both warm and weary, greeted him. He ordered a simple espresso, a fuel for his ever-churning mind, and found a secluded corner table, offering a vantage point to observe without being the center of attention. The space was mostly quiet, the only sounds the gentle hum of the coffee machine and the occasional rustle of pages turning. A few patrons were scattered around the room, each absorbed in their own world. At a nearby table, a teenager, her features sharp with concentration, was furiously sketching in a large pad, her brow furrowed with intensity. A man, his posture rigid with impatience, sat beside her, his features tight and strained. "You need to focus on school, Sarah," he said, his voice a low rumble, clearly struggling to keep his frustration in check. This idea of yours isn't practical. It's a distraction." The space was mostly quiet, the only sounds the gentle hum of the coffee machine and the occasional rustle of pages turning. A few patrons were scattered around the room, each absorbed in their own world. At a nearby table, a teenager, her features sharp with concentration, was furiously sketching in a large pad, her brow furrowed with intensity. A man, his posture rigid with impatience, sat beside her, his features tight and strained. "You need to focus on school, Sarah," he said, his voice a low rumble, clearly struggling to keep his frustration in check. This idea of yours isn't practical. It's a distraction." The girl, Sarah, a bright spark of defiance in her eyes, met his gaze. "It's not just an idea, Dad. If I can refine the cooling mechanism, it could revolutionize how heat sinks are designed. Imagine electronics that never overheat, even in extreme conditions." Her father's sigh was heavy, the sound of a man worn down by the daily grind. He rubbed his temples, a universal gesture of weariness. "You're 16. You should be thinking about college applications, not trying to reinvent the wheel." Elon, his focus honed by years of navigating complexity, found himself drawn to their interaction. He recognized the spark in the girl's voice, the unwavering conviction of someone on the cusp of something remarkable. Her passion was a light in the dim corners of everyday life, a beacon that drew him in. He picked up his espresso, the small ceramic cup warm in his hand, and walked towards their table, his movements as graceful as he was decisive. "Excuse me," he said, his tone respectful, but carrying the quiet authority of someone used to being heard. The man and Sarah looked up, their expressions a mix of mild surprise and curiosity. Recognition flickered across the man's face, a slow, dawning realization of who stood in front of him. But it was Sarah who spoke first, her eyes wide with a blend of disbelief and awe. "You're Elon Musk," she whispered, her voice hushed, as if speaking his name might shatter the moment. Elon nodded, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Mind if I join you?" Sarah nodded enthusiastically, her previous frustration instantly replaced with excitement. Her father hesitated, briefly scanning Elon with a look of suspicion, before finally gesturing to the empty chair opposite him. Elon settled down, placing his espresso on the table. "I couldn't help overhearing," Elon said, his gaze direct but not intimidating. "You're working on heatsink optimization?" Sarah, her initial apprehension replaced by a surge of adrenaline, nodded, her excitement bubbling to the surface. "It's a compact, adaptive cooling system. If it works, it could dramatically increase the efficiency of processors and batteries without needing bulky hardware." Her words tumbled over themselves, a rush of passion escaping the confines of her carefully crafted ideas. "Impressive," Elon responded, leaning in slightly, his interest palpable. "What's your biggest hurdle so far?" His questions were not mere politeness, he was genuinely intrigued. "The adaptive part," she admitted, her voice tinged with frustration. "I can manage steady-state cooling, but the system struggles to adjust quickly to sudden temperature spikes. I suspect it's a material problem, but I'm not sure which one to explore." The words hung in the air, an open invitation to delve deeper into the challenge. Elon nodded thoughtfully, a familiar look of contemplation settling on his face. "Thermal conductivity is tricky, especially at smaller scales. Have you considered using graphene as an interface material?" Her eyes lit up, her focus sharpening. "Graphene? I've read about its thermal properties, but I thought it would be too expensive for small-scale applications." "It is. For now," Elon said with a characteristic smirk, a hint of mischievous confidence in his tone. "But it's scalable. If your design works, economies of scale could make it viable. The key is proving the concept." Her father, who had been silent and observant until now, finally spoke, his tone shifting from skepticism to something closer to concern. "Mr. Musk, I appreciate your interest, but she's still a kid. This is just a hobby, something to keep her mind busy." The words came out softer, a shield against the potential disappointment he feared for his daughter. Elon turned to him, his gaze unwavering, a laser focus that could both inspire and intimidate. "Every breakthrough starts as a hobby. Support her. Even if this project doesn't pan out, the skills she's learning now, the problem solving, the dedication, will be invaluable." His voice was firm but not unkind, the voice of experience speaking directly to a common fear. The man hesitated, his expression visibly softening, the rigid lines around his mouth relaxing. "I just don't want her to get her hopes up. It seems like such a difficult challenge." "Hopes are where it starts," Elon countered, his own experiences echoing in his words. "The only real failure is not trying, not giving yourself the chance to see what you can accomplish." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a slim black notebook. He jotted down a name, number, and a few notes before tearing off the page and handing it to Sarah. "This is the contact for one of my engineers. If you refine your prototype and want to test it, send them your design. He's the best in the business with advanced materials." Sarah took the paper with trembling hands, her breath catching in her throat. "Thank you," she said, the words barely above a whisper, her voice thick with emotion. The weight of the opportunity, the validation, was palpable. As Elon stood to leave, his towering frame casting a long shadow over the table, Sarah's father spoke again, his voice tinged with both curiosity and gratitude. "Why are you doing this? Why invest your time in a random encounter?" Elon paused, his expression thoughtful, his usual intensity tempered by something akin to quiet reflection. "Because someone once did it for me. Someone took a chance, saw something in my crazy ideas. It's my turn to pay it forward." His words were simple, yet they carried the weight of his incredible journey. He turned back towards the counter, his movements fluid as he made his way towards the door, leaving Sarah and her father in a stunned silence, the weight of what had just transpired slowly sinking in. Later that day, as Elon navigated his Cybertruck back towards the more familiar realms of his life, his mind kept returning to the interaction at the cafe. He had no idea where Sarah's journey would lead, if her innovative design would find its place in the world, but he felt an undeniable sense of optimism, a quiet belief in her potential. He had seen the relentless curiosity in her eyes, the spark that he knew all too well, and for that, he held a certain degree of hope for the future. Unbeknownst to him, a patron tucked in a corner of the cafe had recorded a portion of the interaction on their phone. By evening, the clip had gone viral, shared across social media platforms, picked up by news outlets, and sparking widespread conversations about mentorship, the importance of nurturing young talent, and the power of simply believing in someone. The headlines proclaimed, "Elon Musk encourages young innovator at local Austin cafe," each outlet focusing on their unique angle. But for Elon, it wasn't about headlines or public accolades. It was about the quiet satisfaction of planting a seed, of giving someone a chance to bloom, of helping to create a little more magic in a world desperately in need of innovation. He understood the power of a gentle push, the validation that could set a young mind on an extraordinary path. The image of Sarah's face, lit with passion and ambition, was enough for him. The following days brought a flurry of activity. Sarah's story became a rallying cry for aspiring young inventors and students of all ages. She was invited on podcasts and interviewed by national news outlets, her passion as infectious as her determination. And her father? He became Sarah's most ardent supporter, swapping his skepticism for a genuine curiosity about the field of advanced materials and doing everything he could to help her on her journey. Elon, while remaining in the background, quietly kept tabs on Sarah's progress. He received her design through his engineer, the contact he shared at the cafe, and after running some simulations, found the project to be even more promising than he realized. He made it a point to keep checking in, offering advice, but mostly allowing Sarah to make her own mistakes, understanding that failure was one of the most important parts of the process. He saw in her a younger version of himself, fueled by the same restless energy and the unwavering belief in the power of ideas. As Sarah's prototype moved closer to reality, Elon felt a quiet sense of pride. The encounter at Galileo's corner, seemingly random and insignificant at the time, had given him a reminder of one of his core beliefs, that the future was shaped by those who dared to dream, and the greatest impact one could have was in empowering the next generation. It wasn't about fame or riches or building a legacy. It was about lighting a spark and watching it ignite, just like someone once had done for him. And that, he thought, was a legacy worth pursuing. If this story inspired you, leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe for more.